right, we're going to start off with our core values: effective instruction, equitable access and outcomes, and of course, excellence. We are committed to our tier one instructions that will yield on or above grade level achievement. And of course, all of our at-risk students will succeed with equitable access and opportunity. And of course, we are committed to continually pursuing excellence here at Dallas ISD. Our learning objective and success criteria for tonight are as follows. I am learning about the Amplify units for quarter two. Success criteria one, I can explain what Amplify units and topics will be covered in quarter two. I can locate and understand the purpose of each district document that supports the Amplify curriculum, and I can identify resources that will help me customize my lesson. All right, we're going to get into our Unit 2 previews with Bea taking it off.
Okay, welcome. So we are going to be looking just at a preview of what will be coming up in quarter two. And for this demonstration, all I'm going to do is look at the third grade preview. When you get access to the slide deck, you will be able to see the fourth and fifth grade, but for today's demonstration purposes, I'm just going to show you third grade. So what we have here is unit 3, 4, and 5. We've bolded the human, what those topics will cover. So for third grade, we see human body, we see ancient Rome for unit 4, and in unit 5, we will see science. And so then it goes in depth as to what student outcomes are we going to see for those units. So take 2 minutes to kind of read through each of these units. And what I want you to see is if you can see any unit to unit connections or any differences between units, and then please note the unit assessment. I will give you 2 minutes to kind of read through the student outcomes. And so just notice what is similar throughout the units and what is different. I love, we're already seeing some responses in the chat. And so if everyone has plenty of think time, if you want to put your response in the chat, you may go ahead and do so. So we do see prefixes that are connected from a unit to unit. It's all nonfiction for right now for unit 3, 4, and 5. Awesome. Again, writing about reading. We see that every unit does incorporate a writing opportunity. Writing is connected to each one. Informational text requiring text evidence. Yeah, so the human body, sight and hearing, and then the science of light. So we see 2 that are kind of encompassing science. All are talking about verbs. Very good. Yes, I think we pretty much nailed them all. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of reveal what we see as unit-to-unit connections. So we do see we're going to create sentences with subject-verb agreement. We are going to continue developing subject-verb agreement and correct verb tense usage. And it's a little different, but it kind of has to still do with, obviously it has to do with language conventions. So demonstrate understanding of conjunctions and adverbs that indicate when and where. Other connections we see is that in Unit 4, they'll have review of R-controlled vowels and learn spelling patterns for the E sound. And then they're going to review previous spellings for the E and I and learn new spellings for the A sound. A difference we'll see is they're going to kind of a difference, but still in the same line of affixes is identify and use pronouns and prefixes, dis and miss. Then they're going to practice the suffixes. And then they'll review the previously learned suffixes and identify meaning and usage of these suffixes. So a little different from Unit 3 to 4, but in the same family as affixes. So we do see that connection there. And then we talked about writing opportunities. So we were writing about the body systems, writing an opinion essay, and writing an informative article. So we see two informative essays and an opinion essay. One's going to be an article here at the end. So those are different, but yet they're all writing opportunities. And then another thing I want y'all to note are the unit assessments and when they will be given. So unit assessment for Unit 3 will be Lesson 14. The unit assessment for Lesson 15 is ECR writing only. So what that means is that for this particular assessment, you will only have an ECR writing prompt. So if we look at Lesson 15 in 3rd grade Unit 4, they have cases, detective cases. So what they've done is taken one of the detective cases and we have turned it into an ECR writing opportunity, and that's going to be the only assessment that's going to be for Lesson 15. So while it may not look like a regular assessment with the multi-items, multiple choice, and all of it mixed in, this one will just encompass your ECR writing. And then we have a unit assessment in Lesson 14 for Unit 5. Okay, so again, anything in orange was our unit-to-unit connection. Anything in the turquoise was a bit different. And then anything in red is where your lesson assessments will come into play. We have this for 4th grade as well. We will briefly just go through it, and then we have the 5th grade preview. So if that is what you teach, just know you have that as well. Okay, so before we switch over to the next success criteria, any questions regarding our previews? All right, so I will give it over to Will.
Perfecto. All right, so we're going to locate and understand the purpose of each district document that supports the Amplified curriculum. So if y'all could go ahead and pull up y'all Clever account, because that's kind of where we're going to kick off this portion of the presentation.
Hold on, Will. Let me just go back one slide just so they can take a snapshot. You will get this at the end of the presentation, this slide deck, but I will go back. So if you need to capture a picture. I do not have a preview for dual language. Dual language is having their own training as we speak. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. let's look at Curriculum Central. There's a lot of information in here. Some stuff you may already know, some things you may not know. I would like to highlight some of the new things we've added in Curriculum Central and some of the new things we've added on our own curriculum documents. So again, we're going to start by taking a look at Clever, if you could. So if you have the availability, pull up your Clever account. And of course, once you pull up your Clever account, you're going to find the Curriculum Central icon there at the very, for me, it's at the top row. I think it's at the top row for everybody under the featured. So pull up your Dallas ISD Curriculum Central tab. And once we get into Curriculum Central, there's going to be a lot of things in here I want to take a look at. Once you pull up your Curriculum Central, at the very top, we're going to go to our content departments, the little tab in the top right-hand corner. And of course, this you can look at all the contents here. If you want to take a look at math, science, social studies, you may be able to do that if you so choose. But of course, we're going to focus on the RLA Dual 2324. Once you click on the RLA Dual 2324, it's going to pull up another wonderful website. And you're going to see at the top what you see right there on your screen, which is the 2324 focused IPC links. And we're going to kind of go from there. But there's also a couple things I would like to highlight within Curriculum Central that is kind of super important, in my opinion. So one thing, if you want, in the top right-hand corner of that 2324 focused IPC link, if you hover over it on Curriculum Central, you'll see a little arrow, and that will expand that window so you can see the whole Google sheet, which is what that is. Now, the problem with Google is if there's more than, I believe, 100 people looking at the same time, it disables it for everybody else. So if you're actually on the Curriculum Central website, you'll notice on the left-hand side, it gives you the description of what you're looking at there. And in that second paragraph, it says, click here to access focused IPC that is published to the web. So that little bold here is where you want to click. And so if you ever try to open up your IPCs and you can't get into them, click on that little here button, and that's going to open it up to the web page so that anybody can look at it, and there's no limit on how many people can look at it at all the time. Right underneath your focused IPC links on Curriculum Central, there's something that we've added, or that Amplify has added, that's new. What they're doing is they're going through and they're creating unit internalization videos. So if you look right underneath all the links to the IPCs, you're going to see something that says Amplify unit internalization videos. And they don't have every single grade level and every single unit up there. They're starting off, they have a lot of the ones for Unit 3. And same situation, if you click the little expand button in the top right-hand corner of that window, it's going to actually open up a Padlet. And right now they have Unit 3 for kindergarten, first, second, and third. I believe if you scroll over, they have second grade, they have third grade, they have fourth grade, and they have fifth grade. So they have Unit 3 and 4 for third grade, they have Unit 4 for fourth grade, and Unit 3 and 4 for fifth grade. So you can watch their own created unit internalization videos if you so choose. And that's a great resource. Underneath the Amplify unit internalization videos, if you scroll on down a little bit further, you're going to see all of the listed Tier 2 and Tier 3 resources. So if you're wondering, okay, Amplify, this is Tier 1 resources. This is what we use 24/7 in the classroom. What can I use? What are my available resources to help support my other students? Well, here's your list of Tier 2 and Tier 3 resources available to you and to every single grade level. And then underneath that, there's going to be some information that we'll touch on in just a little bit later on in the presentation. All right, going back to the focused IPC links. At the bottom, you have your navigation bar. Make sure we're on 2324 RLA, grades 3 through 5. At the very top of that IPC, the link that is in white, it's going to pull up your year at a glance. When you pull up your year at a glance, this is obviously what you're going to see for your grade level. So the important things about a year at a glance is it obviously tells us what quarter we're going into and a date for the quarter. So quarter 2 obviously is going to be October 9th through December 22nd. One of the other big pieces of information that you're going to find on your YAGs is, of course, the assessment window for each unit. And you have a week for each assessment window. Now, there's always flexibility in the assessment windows. At the end of the day, the goal is to get the assessments done and get them done well. But these are the prescribed assessment windows that they will be open for sure. And of course, it lists out all the units within that quarter, the standards, the TEKS, of course, the course, the reading and the writing
Attached
activity.
to the confirmation email, if you did sign up, it's still the wrong link. It's the Janet, like,
I think you muted yourself.
Thank you. All right, once we have looked at our YAGs, we're going to take a look at our unit-focused IPCs. So whatever quarter, when we're looking at quarter two, whichever week you'd like to look at, if we're looking at the sheet that has all of our links for the IPCs, you can go into whichever particular week you so choose. And of course, this is what they're going to look like. So at the top, we have our date, we have the unit that we're covering, we have the standards, and all of your standards are linked to teksguide.org. We have our learning objective and success criteria listed out for each day. And then underneath that is the clickable links that will take you to the additional resources that we have created in the RLA department. So looking at the fourth grade example that we have on the screen here, if we look at the very last day, that Friday, you have a link that says Bridging the Knowledge, Concrete to Abstract. We have a link for engagement strategies. And of course, we have the name of the lesson and the name of the text for that day's lesson linked as well. If you were to click on Bridging the Knowledge, Concrete to Abstract, or the engagement strategies, that will take you to our created clarity documents. And these clarity documents, these are really a great tool if you're really working on your PLC internalization processes. If you have to fill out any paperwork regarding that in your PLCs, here's kind of the cheat sheet to help you work on those internalization activities that you all are probably having to do in your PLCs. So when you open up the clarity documents, the first thing you're going to see at the very top are these numbers. Of course, fourth is obviously for fourth grade. The next number 3 is for the unit that we're in. So we're looking at grade 4, unit 3, and the 1 refers to the lesson. So grade 4, unit 3, lesson 1. Right underneath that, we have our skills and standards. Of course, the TEKS all listed out. Underneath that, we have provided you with a few grade level question stems, and these are to help you kind of do some additional questioning that is more formatted to what might be seen later in the year on a particular test. After that, we have our learning objective and success criteria listed out for you once again. And then here are the bookmark pieces that we have linked on the IPC, the Bridging the Knowledge, Concrete to Abstract. And kind of the purpose for this little piece right here is it has a few different reasons, actually. One purpose that you might find for it is that it might provide some resources that help build a little bit of background knowledge for your students. If we're moving into a topic that our students aren't familiar with, we might have provided some resources that might provide a little background information for you, or we might have provided some information here that's going to be cross-curricular, whether we're trying to make connections to the social studies curriculum or the science curriculum as well. It's some useful information there. Underneath the Bridging the Knowledge, of course, is the engagement strategies. And these are listed opportunities or opportunities that we've seen to hopefully provide a little bit more engagement activities in your classroom while using Amplify. And what's linked on there in this particular case is the Lead Forward Strategies playlist, which is a great thing. If you have yet to check that out, make sure you check that link out and kind of look at that big, long instructional strategies playlist that Lead Forward provides. But there's all kinds of different activities listed here, videos you can play, and some just pointed out strategies that even Amplify has included within their lessons as well. Underneath the engagement strategies, of course, is your exemplars. And typically what you will find here are exemplars for the short constructed responses. Those happen every single day, almost every single day. Additionally, you might find an exemplar here that is for an extended constructed responses, and those should happen roughly 3 times per quarter, I believe. or per unit, not sure, can't remember. But they will be linked there as well. And you will see the question. In this case, we're looking at a short constructed response question with the provided exemplar that you can use to help guide your instruction with your students in the classroom. Any questions regarding the focused IPCs or the clarity documents? It's fairly straightforward, but it's resources that are there, that do exist, and that are great resources and can be valuable when needed. All right, the very next slide, we have the K-8 RLA Amplify End of Unit Assessment Blueprints. So one of the projects we've been working on is creating blueprints for each of the end of unit assessments, similar to like the STAR blueprint that TEA offers. And you'll get this presentation at the end of our presentation, and these are all linked on here. So the embedded assessment calendar, that is linked on there, and each blueprint is linked on there for each grade level. If we were to pull one of those up, for instance, 4th or 5th grade, they have the unit assessment blueprint right now for Unit 3. So when you're taking a look at your unit assessment blueprints, the information that you're going to find on there are the standards that are tested in that assessment, the item types that are used on that assessment, and some really good information if you're trying to backwards plan for that end of unit assessment within Amplify. All right, and I'm gonna turn it back over to Bea.
So we are going to then talk about customization. So just to review success criteria 3, I can identify resources that will help me customize my lessons. So now that we have previewed the upcoming units and walked through all the district created documents that help with internalization, we will now briefly walk through 2 parts of the lesson internalization so that we can then get to the customization portion. So here's the document that is, here's a document that we see all the time for lesson internalization. The 3 main components that we see for this is going to be for lesson internalization is to review the lesson, dive into the lesson, and the last piece of this is customize the lesson. So we will use that framework as we walk through the next steps. So review the lesson, practice. So teachers, of course, will be spending a lot on lesson internalization since this impacts y'all's daily instruction. So today we are going to fast forward through this 4th grade unit 3, lesson 6 lesson. When you review the lesson, you're looking at the primary focus of the lesson first, and then we're going to check for then we look at the check for understanding, which is towards the bottom. So we'll look at the primary focus of the lesson, the check for understanding, and then the formative assessment, which in this case is the Writer's Journal 5.5. So for this particular lesson, we see that the primary focus for writing is students will provide feedback on a partner's story planning and write an original narrative on the theme of aspiration, employing detailed description and figurative language. On the speaking and listening side, students will share their writing with the partner and with the class and provide supportive feedback about each other's stories. This lesson does fit into our overall unit because they are reading The House on Mango Street and they're focusing on Esperanza's aspirations. And now, as they're formative, they're going to have to write about their own aspirations, just like they've been reading. So this is how all of these components of the lesson flow together. The next portion is going to be diving into the lesson practice. So when we dive into the lesson, we will notice that we look at the lesson at a glance. This will give you the components that make up this particular lesson. The 2 lesson components for here, of course, is going to be our writing and speaking and listening. Okay, so when we dive into the lesson, we're going to focus on two particular questions that pertain to customization. So what student engagement strategies are included with each component? And then what considerations do you need to keep in mind to ensure all students, including English language learners, gifted and talented students, and students with disabilities have access to and interact with grade level content in the lesson? So we want to make sure that when we do this dive into the lesson that we are keeping all our learners in mind. So Amplify has embedded supports. So it'll say support and it'll give you a suggestion on what they can do for that support. So in this case, one of our supports is to model the partner conversation or provide a script. Also, they'll have the English language learners sidebar, which is our emergent bilinguals, is what we call them here in Dallas ISD. And they will give you some suggestions on what to do for beginning EBs, intermediate, and advanced high. So just so you know that these are suggested supports that come with your curriculum. But please note that this is not the only supports that you can give students. If your campus has approved other supports for your students who fall under the criteria of any of these categories, you can also implement them here. We get a lot of teachers saying, well, these supports are just minimal. How do I do more? Well, your campus should be helping provide, but we'll also look into what the district provides as far as more supports here in a minute. Okay. So all of these components will kind of help us eventually to customize this lesson. All right. Here we go. So how do we customize Amplify? So let's just imagine that you are trying a new recipe. What are some things that you do? So for me, first, what I do is I read my recipe carefully. I visualize the steps and think about all the ingredients I need. I make sure I can do all the cooking skills, right? And I have the right cookware to be able to look into this, to be able to do this recipe. Then I'll go through my pantry and refrigerator to see if I already have some of my ingredients that I can use. If so, then I use what I already have that I already know. And if not, I know I need to get more. So then I'm going to make a list of ingredients that I need from the store. I'll then go with my list grocery shopping. And some items we'll find right away, right? They're so easy. They're just what we always use. And I'll grab those. And then there's some that I might need to read the nutritional information or make sure that I'm choosing the best of that type of ingredient for my dish. So when it's time to cook, I will gather all my ingredients, utensils, my pots and pans that are available to me. The first time I try a recipe, I usually do go step by step and don't improvise very much just because I want to make sure I'm getting the base of that recipe. And then when it's finally time to eat, I usually end up evaluating whether I like it or not. I think about the tweaks that I could have made for it the next time. And I typically take notes and add it to my recipe card so I don't forget. Okay. If I make this recipe again, I know if I need a little more of this or a little less of that to make it more to my liking. So this analogy, of course, is about Amplify. That is just a process we use for cooking. However, the same process can work for Amplify as well. So if you haven't figured it out, yes, this is our recipe for Amplify. So the first things that we'll need to do when we prepare for lessons is to read it carefully, visualize it, and internalize it. Okay, ask yourself, what parts of this lesson do I already know how to teach? Which parts do I need to plan for more intently? And Amplify, we want to read the text, we want to read the lesson brief, we're going to review the TEKS materials provided. Then we're going to look at the activities and read the instructional guides so that we can start thinking, how can I deliver this lesson? So consider these your ingredients to which you should read nutritional information, and then we'll chop, mince, and caramelize. Okay, so you may have two things. You have two grocery stores we're going to shop at. We're going to shop the Amplify Mart, which has our text, our lesson components, activities, instructional guides, materials, and TEKS. Then we have to go to the Curriculum Central Market. That's going to have our learning objectives, success criteria, concrete to abstract, engagement strategies, and emergent bilingual strategies. We can sprinkle that with some anchor charts and video clips to make it more engaging, and of course, add best practices that we already know to taste. So this is our recipe for being able to customize a lesson. We definitely don't want to put too much to take away from our recipe or take out too much so that our recipe then gets watered down, right? We want to make sure it's just right and consistent. So when we talk customization, what other things? So maybe you have already seen that we have used, maybe you've already gone into the Clarity document and you're like, well, some of those things were helpful, but maybe I need more. So another district resource that we have is this Elevation Strategies, which are playlists that will give you strategies depending on what you are wanting to get out of students. So for example, if you do not know about Elevation, actually, it is on your Clever. It is available. It's a district tool for us to use. Also, we have updated our 3 through 5 Clarity document to have an Elevation strategies chart that will help you with them at your fingertips. So you don't have to go to Clever. They'll be on our Clarity documents as well. So when should I use these activity strategies? So think about when you're going through the lesson, where could I put these strategies? If what you want is to fortify output, you want students to respond. How do I want students to respond? Your next question is, how do I want them to respond? Do I want that to be in the form of a discussion? Or do I want that to be in the form of a writing? So depending on how you want them to respond will determine which one of these strategies that you are going to choose. So if I want something written, I may have a dialogue journal. If I want them to converse with a peer, I might lean more on my Clock Buddies. So they do have strategies for just depending on what you want to build, such as background. Do you want to foster more interaction, academic language? It's just dependent on what ingredients you're trying to put into your lesson that day. So now that we have all our ingredients, we are now ready to customize our lesson. And this is a process that should be done in PLC, again, to ensure that the customization does not take away from the lesson or add too much. So in this section, we will focus on prioritizing sidebars for mastery of the primary focus objective and discussion formats and engagement. I also want to draw your attention to the advanced preparation section of the teacher guide. This section will give you suggestions on what you could prepare ahead of time to give your students, all learners, access to the what strategies you can use to give them to be able to access the lesson. So for example, if that is, we need narrative structures. In this case, Universal Access for Writing has those narrative structures that you could utilize. So it's just, and then also looking at the sidebars, because as much as we want to give access to students who struggle, we also need to prioritize my on-level students. How can we push them to the next level? And that is when we will look at our challenge sidebars. So what I'm going to do is give you a moment to focus on one of the sections under customize the lesson. And what I want you to do is I want you to look at what should we be prioritizing as we customize the lesson. And then when you're ready, you can put it in the chat. Yes, engagement is a must, including movement. We notice we have a lot of discussions in our Amplify lessons. If you haven't noticed that by now, that is a huge noticing that we do have a lot of discussion. So engagement to move is a must. Anything else? Anyone else notice what should be prioritized? So engagement, yes. Entering that multimedia, if you are used to showing a video to kind of help get, foster kids' background knowledge or foster them with skills, you can still put those great videos in there. But just the only thing I would just caution is time. Look how long that video is. Look how long you have for that section. And that's how you determine, oh, is this going to be the right video? Okay. And then preparing for the misconceptions without getting bogged down. So as you're going through your lessons, think about where you find that misconceptions can come up ahead of time. Let's make a plan for that already before we're in the moment and we're like, oh, okay, trying to problem solve on our feet. We already prepare for that. Which supports and questions will you use? Also, how you want them to respond. That's a big one. So there is a lot of questions that they give you. We give you more question stems on your Clarity document. Do I have to use them all? No, you do not have to use them all, but I would then I would prioritize which ones do you think would give you the most bang for your buck. Use those and then pick what strategy you want to use for engagement. You don't have to, if you have a sentence stem that says the same thing as one that's on the Clarity document that's on there, you don't have to say it multiple times. Just choose the best one do you want to use for that, and then what's going to get kids actually talking. Yes, ensure your supports for misconceptions are ready. All right, so some great things here, and this is all under customize our lesson. And, we want you to think of it as your own personal recipe, even if you don't cook, just how would you want a recipe you've tasted before or you've had before to be better or to improve on, right? We want you to add that teacher touch that we all know that you have. Okay. So here's a customize the lesson exemplar. So what we did is we went through and we went ahead and put areas, we went through the lesson internalization protocol and we added we just highlighted components of this lesson. So for example, I know my lesson components because I've seen it in my unit internalization and we've talked about this earlier, is writing, speaking, and listening for this particular lesson. But also don't forget what materials you're going to need to be able to flawlessly deliver this lesson. In this case, I know I'm going to need a board or chart paper, and I'm going to need my writer's journal 5.5, which that's what they're calling the activity book in this particular unit. So don't get confused when they're like a writer's journal. We're like, what? When did it change to writer's journal? Well, each unit kind of calls their activity book something different. All right, so advanced preparation, I was going through and I was reading it. And for me, I need to go ahead and create my student pairs ahead of time. I need to make sure that I have those pairs ahead of time. And then I want to use this feedback prompt. I know they gave me 3, but I really like these 2. Or it's actually 1 bullet point, but it's like 2 questions within one. So the feedback prompt I want to use with students is I want them to ask, what is the character's aspiration? And I also want to know, because that's what their writing is going to be about in this particular lesson, they're going to have to write about an aspiration. And is it clear what the character wants and what they do to get it? So is it clear what the character wants and what do they have to do to get it? I looked at my universal access to see, could I pull anything from here? Is there anything they give me that I would like to customize? And so I see that I can use these sentence structures with students who might need more scaffolding with the writing prompts. So instead of having to come up with my own sentence structures and fill in the blank and all those things, I'm just going to use what they give me because it does go with what they're writing. Our next thing is the conversational prompts. I want to put these on an index cards for students to use. I may need to do it for all students, but I'm really just thinking about my students who might need that extra support. So maybe not all students need it. So I'm just going to make little index cards for those who do. So it's just dependent on what you want to do as a teacher or what you know, how many kids are going to need that. Also, when I went through the lesson, I'm going to add engagement for discussion questions. In this case, I chose an elevation strategy called Clock Buddies. When you get this presentation, I've actually dropped it into the speaker notes so that you're able to see what Clock Buddies are, how it works, and it gives you a cute printout to go ahead and use it with your students. So that is where I took from the Elevation Mart. And I was like, ooh, Clock Buddies, I love that. Let's do that so that we can randomize and rotate when we discuss. I put a little snippet of the Clock Buddies directions in case you're not familiar. And then, of course, as I went through, students who are ready, remember we said, don't forget about those students who are on level and ready. I am going to have them add more of a show rather than tell details. So I'm going to have them go in and add more details that show us what the character looks like, how they appear, show us through their words. Really what their aspiration is. So more of a descriptive. And then if I notice on the formative assessment, it tells me that the optional figurative language is optional for them to put into their paragraph, into their chapter. So what I want to do is I think that my students who are on level are ready to add that. So I'm going to say, oh, I'm going to tell these particular group of students, I want you to add figurative language. That's going to be my feedback to them to make sure that they add that figurative language because I know they're ready to. And then share ideas and peer feedback. I wanted to use prepared prompt cards here so that students would be able to have that provide feedback for their partners. And I'm just taking the prompts again from what Amplify is giving me. And then the last portion is speaking and listening. And what I'm doing here is I'm changing the stems for the beginning EBs to yes or no question format. I got that idea from my sidebar. I looked at the questions that were here that were already presented, and I just changed them into yes or no questions so that it's easier for them to ask their partner, and their partner can either say yes or no, which would make it a better conversation for them and their partner. Okay, so I'm going to pause here, and I want us to put in the chat, what are some customizations that you feel that you can use with your students? What are some customizations that you see here that you can use with your students that, or how do you think you're going to, what are some ways that you can customize as well? So from what we've provided to what this exemplar looks like, how are we going to customize? What are some takeaways? Clock buddies, elevation, the ELL supports, yes. Post-conversational prompts. Awesome. Elevation, yes, a great tool, a great resource. We've added, you can go to Elevation again through Clever. We've also added a spreadsheet that will help if you're, working on a particular skill. Create graphic organizers to organize ideas. Exactly. If your students need graphic organizers to be able to comprehend, you can use those. Choosing your own activities through Elevation. Customize through index cards with the names on the back for beginners. Yeah, let's give those students who need it their index cards, and eventually they'll wean off of them. Changing question stems. Yes, you can definitely change the question stems to support your learners' needs. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank y'all for sharing. I'm going to let Will wrap this up because we are 5 minutes away from it being over. So we'll wrap it up. And then in the end, I will share the deck at the end. We'll share the deck and the survey.
Perfect. All right. Well, I hope y'all heard that word customization about 100 times. So you have an understanding of what we want y'all to be doing with these Amplify lessons, man. Customize your lessons. You're the great teachers. You can make Amplify just as great as you are if you customize your lessons. All right. What you see on the screen right now are the links to our office hours that we offer every Tuesday and Thursday after late afternoon. These are team links with the change to Zoom. We might eventually change these back to Zoom links, but they are currently team links. The 3 through 5 is from 3:30 to 5. And there's also, you'll see the links on there for dual in case you need to hop on over to any of the dual language team members links and ask them any questions. This whole, all these meeting links are also on the Curriculum Central website at the bottom. What you'll also find on the Curriculum website are all of our beautiful faces and contact information, along with all of the contact and beautiful faces of your dual language partners as well. So anytime you need any help with any of the curriculum or any guidance with anything, please reach out to any of us. And it doesn't matter really who you contact on here. They will get you into contact with the person that you need to speak with, or that can best help you out with whatever it is you may need.